Hello, Sharks fans! My name is Jacob Boyd, and I'll be presenting to you today the Erik Karlsson trade outcome and my opinions on who won that trade and just a general perspective of the San Jose Sharks' outlook on the trade itself. Now, I know there are fans and pundits alike who think the Pens just, skirted out with a grade or a letter grade. And plenty of hockey writers and YouTubers alike are saying the San Jose Sharks got shafted in this deal. Hear me out on this trade throughout the video and let me share my takes on each team and how they fared. So let me kind of go ahead and get right into it with, cap friendly and, showing you guys what it looks like in terms of, who got what in this trade. So I understand that, everyone knows who got what in this Erik Karlsson trade by now, as I am coming out with this video months after the trade has occurred. I also understand that a lot of Sharks fans don't want to relive this moment just because the start of the new season is just around the corner. Yet I think this is a perfect time for me to explain my thoughts and points of view of all parties involved, because the start of the season is around the corner, like I just said. The teams that will get to see at least the short term, and we'll get to see at least the short term views of this trade as well, because of the season coming in and what we'll notice on those players and what they're doing for each of their respective teams. Getting into the trade, this was a 3-team trade, like y'all know, between the Sharks, Pens, and Canadians. But starting off with, who the Pens received, I'm going to go ahead and kind of get into that right now. Obviously, the Pens getting the big fish in Erik Karlsson. But the biggest thing that people need to realize is the Pens are having the Sharks pay 13% retained salary, which equates to about $1.5 million each year for the remaining 4 years of Erik Karlsson's contract, meaning it's a total of $6 million saved for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, we know that they're in a world of hurt in terms of cap space. So that needed to happen for the Pens to make this deal. But with that said, the Pens also acquired Dylan Hamlick, which is a former second round pick of the San Jose Sharks in the 2019 draft. This was terrible, or he was terrible at each stop in both the WHL all the way to the AHL. He didn't have a good season with the Barracuda last year, and I have no idea what the Sharks were thinking when drafting this player that high back in 2019, but it did happen. This was a throw-in kind of a player and he was, not a good prospect at all for the San Jose Sharks and will never really sniff the NHL, in my opinion. Lastly, the Pens acquired from the Sharks a 2026 third-round draft pick. In my mind, that was, let's see here, that was, a kind of a throw-in, in my opinion, so that it was kind of a offset with the salaries. And so that was kind of in there as well. So that was not till 2026 though. So this is when the Sharks look to turn the tides on the NHL and become, a good team with their young players coming through the ranks, along with, a mix of free agents that Mike Greer has opened up for this very moment with this Erik Karlsson trade. because 2 years down the line they're not going to have any money on the books in terms of Erik Karlsson's contract, except for the 1.5 retained money in years 3 and 4. So yeah, that's going to add the cap flexibility. So all that being said, though, this may very well be a mid to later round pick in the 3rd round if all goes to plan for Greer and the Sharks. Obviously, the Penguins are hoping the latter in terms of hoping the Sharks still won't be good to get a earlier pick. But moving on to another player that the Pittsburgh Penguins received from the Montreal Canadiens, they got Rem Pitlick. The Pens did receive. He's a center. He's only 26 years old. Really hasn't played much. 3.5 seasons of hockey at best, and yeah, and just half seasons at best, I should say. And he scored, I want to say, 26 points in 46 games played, as being his best year. And then last year he had 46 games played with only 15 points, which seems to me like a guy that is pretty much a scratchable player in my estimations from night in and night out for the Penguins coming forward, or maybe even their AHL affiliate. Not too sure what they're going to do with him. Maybe, I don't know why. Maybe just because of salary, he had to be thrown in. Either way, not a needle mover by any means. So just another throw in the deal. Going back to Karlsson's stats. The Pens did get the best player in the deal by far, with a 101 point D-man, but he is often injured. When Karlsson is healthy, though, he can be a 3-time Norris Trophy winner, but staying healthy has been his biggest issue for much of his career. For me, watching Karlsson specifically the past 4 years and some change in Ottawa, the Pens will get a player that has elite vision on the ice. He will find sticks for tips in front of the net from the point. He'll have he has great to good shot ability from the blue line, that he finds holes because he knows how to create space moving horizontally and getting it through would-be shot blockers. He also has elite burst of speed, breaking out of his own defensive zone to move past defenders with ease, but also can stretch from his own zone. It makes those stretch passes from his own zone and make tape to tape passes on forward sticks. Yes, everything I mentioned here is great and elite, but I preface the word "but" here because Karlsson, when Karlsson is defending, he won't front he will front the forward, meaning he'll try and step in front of the screening player and in front of the goalie. This allows for a screen goalie 10 out of 10 times because he just does not battle with the guy in front. He gets pushed around rather easily because of his size down low, and he doesn't have that compete that winning players do in those high danger areas. Teams also hem you into their own zone for long periods of time because when shots were coming in and he just had a lack of intensity to go and retrieve those pucks, and always lost the battle behind the net because he just stick checks everyone, and instead of playing the body. It was time and time again that I would notice this is as a hockey fan, not just as a Sharks fan. What I truly believe is that Karlsson saves all of his energy for in the offensive zone or to break out of the D zone. He'll go ahead and save that energy to when it's 100% a win in his eyes. But Pens fans don't expect him to win those, 50-50 battles. So I just preface all these lack of defensive qualities because I just wonder what it's going to be like for a Pens team that's trying to make the playoffs. But Pens fans, you're gonna watch him cook in the offensive zone. He's clearly the most elite defensive player, on the ice, and um, he's gonna really bring an offensive side of the game to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it's gonna be unbelievable to watch. And I hope he does well in Pittsburgh. I really do. I just I I see his lack of defensive prowess being a problem. It was a problem with the Sharks. It was a problem at Ottawa. I really wonder what that lack of defense is going to be for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I just hope that it doesn't get in the way of them making the playoffs, because if it does, the Sharks are going to really reap the benefits with that pick next year in the first round. I believe that they'll make it out of the bottom 10 of the league, but how far do they fall, basically, or how well do they do is the bigger question. Overall, I give the Pittsburgh Penguins a letter grade of a B+ in the win now mode in this trade. And because they got the best player, obviously they had to give up a lot in this one. But for the future of the Pittsburgh Penguins in like year two, it looks kind of bleak with the expiring, not expiring, but with Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby, and now Erik Karlsson being a lot older. I just wonder how this is going to, progress down the line in terms of year 2, 3, and 4. What is this Pittsburgh Penguins team going to even look like? When does Sidney Crosby retire? When does Evgeny Malkin retire? Those are the big questions moving forward for this team and this trade. Because we saw it with the San Jose Sharks where, when we got Erik Karlsson, we did make the playoffs that year, but I feel with a much better Sharks team at that point, I don't think this Pittsburgh Penguins team is as good as that Sharks team was back in, I forget what year it was when we made that trade for him about 4 years ago or 5 years ago now. And so I really wonder how it's going to age, because it didn't age well for the Sharks. But back to the San Jose Sharks and what they received in the deal. Getting into Mikael Granlund, I felt that, excuse me. Let me go ahead and get to Mikael Granlund here. We received him in the Pittsburgh Penguins deal. He has a $5 million cap hit for the next 2 years remaining total. 2 years remaining, totaling it to be a $10 million AAV for the full contract. So 2 years, $5 million. Granlund's a former first round pick, number 9 overall, back in 2010. And, he has played a ton of hockey in the National Hockey League. His top season being a 69-point season, but his most recent was with Nashville and the Pittsburgh Penguins, totaling 79 games played, 10 goals, 31 assists, 41 points, which isn't a totally bad season. Then the year before, he had 64 points in a great season with the Nashville Predators. So I think a lot of pundits and hockey writers have been underestimating what Granlund has done over the course of his career. I understand that, Granlund is probably on the back half of his career, but if he gets power play time on the Sharks team and gets the ice time, I do believe that he can put up that 50-point season, 40 to 50-point season, if all goes well, and may even be able to get traded at the trade deadline. But we'll see how that works out. Next, you have Jan Ruda. Jan Ruda comes with a cap hit of 2.75 million for 1 year. So he's a 6'3", 204-pound defenseman, which is a pretty decent sized body that the Sharks just haven't had in a long time. You know, with the likes of Ferraro, Benning, and Karlsson, those guys are relatively on the smaller statured side. So we always had a problem, you know, moving people out of the front of the net for screens. I think Ruta will help in that situation. This is basically Erik Karlsson's replacement, where you'll see a steady defensive presence at the back end and hopefully, like I just said, clear the front of the net night in and night out. Also to mention, you know, he's a 2-time Stanley Cup winner. So you'll know that he will battle every shift and, you know, he's just a winner. So that's always good to have on our team. Obviously not the offensive dynamo that, you know, Erik Karlsson is, but and he also hasn't played a bunch of games in the regular season now that I noticed his stats here. But you know, he does have a ton of experience and he is a plus player, you know, coming out. Like if you look at it on his plus minus, he's a plus player every single year, but his first year was a -1. So, I mean, technically just a plus player everywhere he's been and whenever he's in. Even in the playoffs, he's like a +5 and a +7. So he's always on the ice for the goals and doesn't let in goals. So that's a good sign. What Mike Greer does with him at the trade deadline, though, is up for debate. I don't know if he'll be traded or not, but it does look more and more likely that he could be traded at the deadline if he does have a good season. But yeah, that's another player that the Sharks did receive. So moving forward, we have another player that was sent over by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that was, oh, I'm sorry, not a player, but the draft pick that was sent over from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that was the first round pick in the 2024 draft of next year, or of this coming year's draft. It's a top 10 protected pick, meaning if the Pens just have a bad year and are one of the 10 worst teams in the NHL, the Pens would keep this pick for the 2024 season. And it would then roll over to a 2025 unprotected first round pick. So I definitely see them not as a bottom 10 team. So I assume this would go to the Sharks, but we'll just see where that kind of goes. And that means that the Sharks will have 2 first round picks in next year's draft and a possible third first round pick if the New Jersey Devils in the Timo Meier trade, if they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals or Stanley Cup, one of the two. That will then become a first round pick, where it shows the New Jersey Devils second round pick here. That's conditional, but it will go to a first round pick if they do make the Eastern Conference Finals. Anyways, that's not part of this deal. So moving forward, you got Mike Hoffman, who was sent over by the Montreal Canadiens. Let me go ahead and show you his stats here. The past, we received him, and he's on a $4.5 million cap hit for only 1 year. So all this guy has done in his past is just score goals for each team he's played on. As you can see, I mean, look, he's had 20 plus goals, 30 plus goal seasons, and then he's had a 70-point campaign at one point, and just like 5 years ago, 59 4 years ago, and then 36 pretty much each of the last 3 years. But he is also on an expiring contract, Sharks fans. So this $4.5 million will come off the books, And, we'll see what Mike Grier does with him at the trade deadline, if he's going to be, staying and then maybe just get, hit unrestricted free agency. We'll see what Hoffman wants to do at the end of the season, or if Mike Grier trades him. In total, though, Sharks fans, the Sharks received Mike Hoffman from Montreal, Jan Ruda, Mikael Granlund, and 2024 first-round pick from the Pittsburgh Penguins. The San Jose Sharks are paying $12.25 million AAV to the players mentioned above, but also retaining the $1.5 million AAV on Erik Karlsson's contract, making year one the Sharks, total cap hit taken on is $13.75 million. Meanwhile, Karlsson's contract was $11.5 million alone. This is where Sharks fans and hockey writers alike are like, whoa, the Sharks are taking on more money than Erik Karlsson's contract and getting a return of a bunch of older players at the ends of their career. No, Sharks fans, this is not the case. The reason for GM Mike Grier doing this was A, to get the players on expiring deals, B, to get better offensively with proven veteran forwards who have had great seasons in the past and trying to tap into that potential, and C, to have cap flexibility in the future. As I mentioned, expiring deals. You can also add in a D where trade assets, if any of those players have a good season, you can flip for those for draft picks. For the Sharks, this trade was never to get more grade A or B draft prospects in return. The Pens didn't have that anyways. I know hockey writers and pundits were wanting the Sharks to get back D prospects and like Pettersson in return, but the Pens had him in the NHL already and playing well, which they weren't willing to part with anyways. You can think about it the same with Dawson Mercer, where every Sharks fan wanted him and multiple picks for Timo Meier. Yet Mercer outplayed Timo Meier in the playoffs and down the stretch of the regular season as well. So it just goes to show that a lot of fans overvalue their own beloved players. And I hate to say that, but we all do it. So, my last thoughts are, regarding this, that the Sharks got in return is, they retained $1.5 million in retained salary. Karlsson each year and Granlund's $5 million for one season, meaning year two is only $6.5 million annual AAV owed by the Sharks, which is almost half of Karlsson's contract. And year three gets even better, where everything is off the books except for the $1.5 million retained. Then in year four, they only do the same, retain $1.5 million. So all in all, Mike Grier chose not only to do the right by Erik Karlsson and getting him traded to a team that wants to compete now, just like he did for Bernsey, just like he did for Timo Meier. He does it again for Erik Karlsson, as this really was a trade demand from Karlsson, whether it was said in the media or not. Either way, you look at this trade from the Sharks' perspective, the Sharks weren't winning with Erik Karlsson on the team, nor did they win with him and Timo Meier. So it was good for Mike Grier to get rid of his contract, start fresh. I'd give the Sharks a B in this trade for the reasons mentioned earlier. I know a lot of fans are thinking B for that return. It really wasn't the return that I'm really looking at. I'm looking at the whole, at it as a whole, with the cap hit and then the potential return for those other three players in trades, and also getting a first round pick. So, and then also, not having any cap hits really to mention after, in years 3 and 4. Anyways, getting into the last of this trade with the Canadians, Jeff Petrie, who Montreal took on 3.125 million, had the Pens eat 1.562 million in retainment. He then got shipped off to Detroit after that trade. I won't really get into that, but Petrie is a solid defenseman who plays big minutes and is generally paired on the top line, D line. They also got goalie Casey DeSmith, who has 1.8 million cap hit for 1 year. He also then was traded to Vancouver after this trade, so he's no longer on the team, and they got a draft pick for that and Tanner Pearson. Then they received Nathan Legary, an AHL player that I don't really see in Montreal's future. Lastly, the Pens sent Montreal a 2025 second-round pick. This pick could settle nicely for Montreal with an aging Pens team that could be, in bad shape by 2025. This may eventually turn into a nice, early pick in the second round for Montreal. So overall, they got a fourth rounder in the Petrie trade, a third rounder in the Casey DeSmith trade, along with Tanner Pearson, who has been often injured, but generally a 30 to 40 point player as a middle six guy. But all in all, with each move made, now Montreal ends up getting a 2025 second round pick, a 2024 third round pick, and a 2024 fourth round pick, and Tanner Pearson in this deal.